Welcome to the StoryADay podcast. This is Julie Duffy from StoryADay.org, encouraging you to be a writer every day, not someday. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Julie from the StoryADay podcast here. It is lovely to know that you're out there listening and writing, and it's so lovely to hear from you. I absolutely love it when I hear from people who are listening to the podcast, and sometimes they tell me things I've said that I don't remember, and I go, wow, okay, that was helpful. So if you have any comments for me, please feel free to get in touch, julie@storyaday.org. This week I am going to talk to you about the upcoming StoryADay May challenge. I've got a little twist to play on it this year. It's going to be very exciting. I'm excited. It's going to be new. A person who challenges herself to write a story a day for a month and then keeps the challenge going for 12 years is, not continuously, obviously I don't do it every month, but this has been running since 2010. Obviously I like a little excitement in my life, and this year I'm shaking things up a little bit. The classic challenge will exist, and the StoryADay community is coming through for me on that. They're going to help out with that a little bit, freeing up a little bit of time for me to create something that's going to be exciting for those of you who look at the idea of a story a day and go, oh no, I am never doing that. I've got something else for you this year which might help you. Somebody gave me a great analogy for it. It's like when they run a marathon, there's also a fun run or a 1 mile walk or something like that. So think about that analogy. I'll talk a little bit more about it later. First of all, I wanted to share with you, I was lucky enough to get to go to a writing conference this week. It has been literally years since I've been in the room with other writers, and there were like 7,000 people signed up for this one. I think a lot of them were virtual, but a lot of them were there. I was at the Association of Writers Programs conference. It was in Philadelphia this year, which is my city, so I popped down and took advantage, and I came back with all kinds of lessons and impressions that I wanted to kind of just download for you here a little bit. I'll be using these resources at the site, in the blog, on the podcast. I've got some interviews I want to do with people I met. But the thing that I wanted to bring back for you is that the short story form is alive and well. Now, Conference of Literary Programs, MFA programs, things like that, is always going to tell you that the short story form is alive because that's sort of their bread and butter. It's what they train people to write. But the fact is, even around the fringes of that more literary world, there are weird and wonderful short story forms being written. There are people who write nothing but short stories and don't feel they have to apologize for it. There are weird and wonderful publications that are sharing these stories. But the lesson that I heard, and yes, everybody had to be vaccinated and masked to be in the building, which was lovely. So that's why I felt safe going. But then I was there with all of these writers who had, like all of us, had their lives turned upside down. Most of the panelists were people who teach in writing programs. So college professors or teachers or associates or whatever they call them. I didn't go through the system here, but I know a little bit more about it than I used to. But the majority of people had some kind of association with a college, but a lot of them were also writing and publishing and doing all that. So they had their lives turned upside down, and a few panels addressed this. There was a question about, how has the last couple of years changed your writing? The one that was most interesting to me was the one which was full of people whose first short story collections had been published in the last couple of years. So they had a couple of things to contend with. They had an unusual publishing experience because there wasn't the usual fanfare and going to conferences and going on book tours and things like that. But they also had their whole routine upended. And what I found really interesting, not just on that panel, but on every panel with people who are what the external world might consider successful with their writing, i.e. they are getting published, they all talked about the struggle after some success, to find the fun in writing again. And they also talked about, the struggle to find fun and purpose in their writing in the world as it is now. Because I think a lot of people, especially in America, we've had, a pretty comfortable existence for a while. And then the world is kind of churning a bit at the moment. And so people, these questions are coming up for them of, what is writing for? What can fiction do? Who am I to have a voice? And it was very interesting to sit in the audience looking at these people who, by external measures, are very successful. They're teaching at big name universities and getting published, and they were still questioning, who am I? What is my fiction good for? So if you're struggling with that stuff, I think it's important to know that it kind of never goes away, and you have to come to terms with it, and you have to figure out your own way of working through that. Now, some of them, one of them in particular, Christina Gorchev, Newberry, who grew up in the Soviet Union and is now here writing, she talked about the importance of community, which was music to my ears, because it's the thing I've discovered that surprised me the most. I talk about it here all the time. And you could tell that these panels had been put together by groups of people who knew each other, knew each other's work, shared a kind of literary branch on the family tree, which is so interesting because sometimes we think that people succeed on their own and that writing is an isolated way of life, and it's so not true. Everywhere you turn, people are forming communities, they're supporting each other, even if it's just to give each other a pat on the back and say keep going, or if it's to introduce somebody to an agent, or if it's to invite somebody on a panel, or if it's to find somebody to read your work and give you feedback on it. Things you can't see. So community was very important and very evident. Everybody was giddy. And everybody there was a sensitive, introverted writer. I mean, not everybody, obviously, but the majority of people there were like you and me. They've just chosen to make a living in the literary world, which not all of us have done. And interestingly, I don't think any of them were making money from their fiction. They're not commercial writers. They're all working at colleges and they're all teaching what they're learning themselves. And if you want to make a living from your writing, you really need to treat it like a business. You need to go into a commercial field, be writing romance or be writing science fiction and be very strategic about what you're writing. That's not what these people are doing. They're writing purely for the love of it, and none of them seem to be making any money at it. They've all got day jobs and they've all got second, volunteer gigs at these literary magazines that we're all trying to get published in, which was very interesting to me because it seemed like most of the literary magazines that were represented at this conference, the job of editor was extremely overworked. Most of the people who work for the publication are volunteers. Most of them are writing as well and teaching and raising families and. And I just got this sense of frenzy. So one of the panels, the editors apologised for the length of time it takes them to get back to us as writers, and they explained sort of what their work looks like. And it's insane. Nobody's getting paid and they're all, under this deluge of stories. And yeah, it takes them a while to get back to it. So I want to really, really stress, if you are not finding success, if you're sending stories out and you're not finding success, don't think that you're being rejected by some editor who is a professional, who is rejecting you on the basis that you're just not good enough and they've been appointed to be an arbiter of taste. It's kind of not like that. Yes, the editors of literary magazines spend all their time reading through lots and lots of stories. They think about writing all the time. They've got their own tastes, their own peccadillos, but they are also just massively overworked and underpaid and, reading stuff that's handed to them by a volunteer that they may or may not have trained. So don't ever think that a rejection says very much about the quality of your writing. I mean, I say that, and intellectually I say that all the time. It could just be timing. It could just be that it's not to their taste. It could be that it's the wrong length. There's all kinds of reasons why you can get rejected. But some of it is also just that these are tiny, tiny operations with strong personalities at the head of them. And if you don't happen to write the kind of stuff that their friends are writing, and the stuff that they like, then that's all it says if you get rejected. It might mean that your story needs to be revised. It might mean your story is terrible. It might mean you don't have a handle on how to write a story at all. But that's just one in a galaxy of possibilities. The most likely thing is that the story you sent them didn't fit their needs right now. It just didn't have that extra sparkle when you're reading 900 stories in 9 months and you're really looking for something that stands out. So that's great. We need to know, we need to punch up our work. We need to make it more uniquely ours. One of the editors who, she's actually a professor, and she was reading a competition, 2 competitions for MFA students, and she said she was struck by how similar all the stories were. It was really rare to find something that really stood out. And so she was absolutely saying what we say around here, which is lean into your weird, right? Lean into the things that make your stories uniquely yours. Don't write to the market. Unless you're writing really, you want to write commercial thrillers or something like that, then yes, go study, read the market, figure out what people are buying, write something fast, get lots of them out, you'll make your living that way. If you are more on the artistic end and really want to be writing just because it is a thing that you want to do to the best of your ability, then focus all your efforts on writing the thing that you want to write, and don't worry too much about whether it fits what you think people are looking for, because usually what they're looking for is something that isn't like everything that's already out there. And that's not true of mass market entertainment. That's why we get so many sequels at the movies, because people want something that feels familiar, is a slight twist on something they've seen before. These literary magazines really are looking for, when you get up to the art level of arts and literature, people really are looking for something that makes them go, huh, and that stops them in their tracks. So don't ever be afraid to write the weird little story that you can't imagine anybody else would be interested in. That was one of the things I heard on the panel from the people who had their first books published during lockdown, since the last conference. And they all said, I never thought this would be a book. I never thought anybody else would be interested. Caroline Kim, who gave us a writing prompt last year, she said she was interested herself in Korean history. That's her heritage. And so she just didn't know much about it. So she went and researched, and then she wrote all these weird little stories. Some of them are set in the diaspora, some of them are set in Korea. One of them was set in the 1700s, one of them set in the future. And she was like, I couldn't imagine that anybody else would be interested in this. But eventually she put together a collection, she entered it into a competition, it won, it got published, and here we are. And everybody on that panel said the same thing. They were like, at some point, at some level, I just never thought this was going to be a book. And they just wrote. They wrote because they had something to prove to themselves, because they needed to write, because they wanted to be creating something that was meaningful to them. So I really encourage you to lean into the weird, figure out how to get satisfaction and motivation from simply doing the work, and put all of that other stuff into a box and bring it out from time to time. Bring out the business stuff from time to time if you're interested. If you are interested in making money from your writing, again, I just refer you to Jane Friedman's awesome book, The Business of Being a Writer. She makes it very clear that you're probably going to have multiple strings to your bow, and gives you a handbook of how to do that. Okay, it turns out I have a lot to say about this, so I'm probably going to keep talking about the state of the short story in future podcasts. But I'm going to change gears now a little bit to talk about the upcoming StoryADay Challenge. May is approaching. I'm recording this on the 2nd of April, And no kidding, this is the 2nd of April, so don't worry about me making any jokes on April Fool's Day. I am going to be introducing a new way of approaching Story a Day this year. Like I say, the classic 31 days, 31 prompts will still be there for you. But if you are interested in going a little slower, and I think that all of us are a little tired, and we're ready to do stuff, but we may not be ready for the full marathon this year. And also I've learned a lot over the last few years about the value of slowing down, the value of working at a pace that's sustainable. And I get that the challenge is fun and fast and it lets you outrun your inner editor, but that doesn't work for everyone. So I wanted to introduce a new way of doing this. What we'll end up doing, I think, it's not quite ironed out, and you'll be helping build this as we do it, because your reactions to it will see whether it happens again or if it's working at all. But here's what I think is going to happen. We're going to spend the first week of May prepping. I'm going to send you daily tasks. They can be anything from tiny little tasks, involve gathering ideas or thinking about your identity as a writer, making it public, because I think community is so important. And the second week, I think, is going to be the one where I take you through the short story framework and we build a story day by day and really work on, at a sustainable pace, putting together one draft that will come with daily challenges, daily things to think about. And then the third week, we'll think about getting it into shape, or, tweaking it, or whatever comes up after that for you. There's multiple things that can happen. You can be the kind of person who needs to put the story away for a while. You can be the kind of person who wants to do an immediate revise. We can talk about planning for keeping this going after the month of May ends. Because one of the things that happens with these challenges is that people write pell-mell and it's very exciting and you get all of this adrenaline, and then you trudge across the finish line and it's like a huge achievement. And then you fall off a cliff because you're exhausted and you don't want to think about writing again because you've been doing it you're so burned out and exhausted and then there's nothing there to pick you up. So what I want us to spend some time with the Story a Day fun size version is spending some time after you've written that story thinking about what's next and thinking about how you build that practice. And so the whole month is going to be kind of me holding your hand as you get back to your writing if you haven't been doing it, or try a different pace if you have been running flat out. If you've been working on novels, this is going to be a lovely little palette cleanser for you. It's going to give you the opportunity to work on one short but low stakes project. This is still not intended to be your magnum opus. This is still not intended to be a work of staggering genius. This is still a first draft of one short story that you're writing for the fun of it. You're writing it for yourself. There may be an opportunity in there to have me take a look at some of the stories and do a little masterclass critique on one of the days. Still working out the details there, but there'll be an opportunity to enter that drawing as well. So lots of exciting stuff coming for Story a Day this year. It's going to be great. We're going to have just tons of prompts as usual, tons of community, people commenting in the comments at storyaday.org, and then also this second track that if you're interested in more in a slower paced, figuring out your rhythms, figuring out a sustainable practice for your writing, and having fun, right? Having just writing for the fun of it, because that is where it sounds trivial. People trivialize fun and humor, but I think they're incredibly important, keeping us going, keeping us creating important stuff, because fun and humor are part of the human condition, and if we ignore them, then I don't know what we're doing. So fun in your writing is the stuff that's going to make it sparkle. Not saying you have to write funny stories, but you need to be having fun. I always say I have a friend who murders people in her stories, and she has a great time doing it. She's having great fun. In fact, I've got more than one friend who writes horror, and for them, the definition of fun is, gory and terrifying, but they're having fun while they're doing it. So whatever your value of fun is, we're going to make sure that you have some of that, because that's where the really, truly you stuff comes out. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm a little nervous. I'm a little excited. I hope you will tell all your friends, because the more people we have in there, the more the community gets rolling, and the more ideas you get from other people, and the more you understand the value of community. And this is all, the free challenge in May. I have other stuff that you can get involved in. There's a 6-week course, there's the Superstars membership group, there's the 3-day challenge, all kinds of things where you can spend your money. But the StoryADay May challenge is not that. It is just a celebration of the short story, a celebration of writers. It's a chance for you to leap in with both feet and find the fun, find your path to writing. Okay, I'm over time. I'm going to stop talking now. I hope you have a wonderful writing week, and I will speak to you again soon. Let me know if you have any questions, and do check out my YouTube channel, which is, YouTube.com/StoryADay, where I'm doing these bite-sized Julie Explains Things Simply pieces, which are for explaining literary jargon. Things like, what does show don't tell really mean? What is flash fiction? Questions like that. And I try and give you the essentials in about 3 minutes. So hopefully you'll jump over to YouTube now and check out the Jets series, and have a great writing week. If you want to learn to write, don't read another book or article. Start writing. I'm here to invite you to consider the StoryADay 3-day challenge. It's a challenge and a workshop that gets people writing and completing stories in just 3 days. And it works. I'm fanatical about getting more and more diverse stories into the world, and I think yours should be among them. If you're feeling the pull to write or level up your storytelling, let me hold your hand through 3 days of short story writing. Check out the 3-day challenge at storyaday.org/3DC. Thanks for listening. Why not come over to the blog at storyaday.org and check out this week's writing prompts and articles. And in the meantime, have a great creative week, and of course, keep writing.